I got the weekend off in the summer set. Believe it's about time to breeze. Rack top down, can't do anything. There's no place I would rather be. Yeah, I got enough in this view to do. Last time to let it go. This place is always live, and it's the bottom line. It's my freedom above all. It's out of sight. Couldn't be found, I got to say. Out of sight. I'm free tonight till the sun sets. Till the sun sets.
Welcome to the Friends of Dan Music Podcast. I'm Dan Miles. Carmine Appice made his initial appearance on the American music scene in 1967 as a drummer for the iconic 60s band Vanilla Fudge. After that, he became a founding member of several high-profile bands, including Cactus, Beck, Bogert, Appice, and King Cobra. And he also joined a number of prominent bands, the most visible being his time with Rod Stewart. He remains active to this day, not only as a drummer, but also as a songwriter, vocalist, author, motivational speaker, and educator. In 2016, he published a very honest and candid autobiography, which he titled Stick It, My Life of Sex, Drums, and Rock and Roll. In addition to his book, we're also going to be focusing on his acclaimed Guitar Zeus project, a 2-volume compilation that was originally released in Japan back in the 1990s. I've really been looking forward to speaking with him about the various phases of his long and colorful career, so let's get him on the line. Joining me on the Skype from New York is Carmine Appice. Welcome.
Hey, how you doing?
Well, I very recently read your book, and I must say that I knew I was going to enjoy reading it just from a table of contents. You got my nomination for, the all-time greatest chapter title, Chapter 3, Why is Hitler on our album?
I have to laugh at that one. That's funny, right? It is funny.
Well, that's my point, is like when I saw that, I knew the book was going to be funny. You do an excellent job of covering the peaks and the valleys of your life and career. That Hitler reference pertains to a project that, you mentioned, you categorize as more of a low point.
Yeah, I call that the album that killed the Vanilla Fudge career.
Right. So we'll let their listeners read that part and find out for themselves. But, I saw that and I go, oh, this is going to be fun to read because that just struck me so funny. I wasn't expecting to see that.
Right.
So you were born and raised in Brooklyn, and my main takeaway from your childhood years is how supportive your parents were when it came to your musical aspirations.
Yeah, they were. My father used to drive me around with his car, and when I first got drums, the first drum set was a bass drum and a snare drum and one cymbal, and I must have been 10, 11 years old. I don't know how old I was, and 6 months later, I did my first gig in the Bronx with a guy on the block that played trumpet and another guy that played acoustic guitar. And we went on the road and to the Bronx and played. My father brought us up. We put everything in the trunk of his car. Imagine that, putting the whole band set up in the trunk of your car. And then we went up and played, and I made $7.50. And I was, wow, this is cool. I made money. I used to keep these books that I still have of how my first gigs and second gigs and third, and then it got more to, I was making like $60, $70, $80 a month. Yeah, we're talking like 1962, 61. And, you see the money growing. By the time I was 17, I bought a brand new car.
That's sweet.
Yeah, I put the down payment. My parents co-signed for me and did that. But they were always supportive of what I was doing because I always tried to do the right thing financially. And, I always worked. I always played. And I gave lessons. I did all that stuff. And eventually they got me a second drum set for my... I've been lucky. My birthday and Christmas are in December, So I used to get one big gift if I needed it.
Yeah.
So the first big gift I got was a drum set, and then I got other big gifts, through my life. The second big gift was a real drum set by Gretsch, because the Gretsch Drum Factory used to be in Brooklyn. And the guy that worked there lived on our block, and he knew I played drums, and he got an amazing deal from my parents, it was a bass drum, snare drum, tom-tom, and a Zildjian cymbal. So I got that drum set, and as I played more gigs, I added to it. I put a floor tom on. I got a hi-hat cymbal and another cymbal stand for another cymbal. And eventually, I had the setup that I used when I recorded You Keep Me Hanging On, and that was the actual drum set I recorded it on.
As I read those chapters, you mentioned your parents lived in a one-bedroom apartment, and then they eventually had 4 children. Unfortunately, as the family grew, the apartment didn't.
No, it didn't. It didn't. And we were talking about that yesterday and everyone started with everybody squeezed into a smaller place, And then we graduated to another place that instead of me and my older brother sleeping in my parents' double bed and my sister sleeping next to us in a folding bed, and my brother Vinny, who was just born in a crib in the living room, we all had rooms. I mean, me and my brother had a room we shared. We had 2 single beds. And my sister had a single bed, and Vinny was still in the crib.
Right.
But I had a room in the front that had a drum set. And there's pictures of it in the book. And funny enough, I talked to the publishers yesterday. They're going to do a little bit of a push on the book on Amazon and social media to get some more people to read it, because it really came out great. And all the people that did read it, including like yourself, really loved the going through it and reading it. And they said it was like a roller coaster ride, And people tell me that they didn't want to put it down,
Absolutely. And we'll be touching on some aspects of it, but naturally we're not going to give the whole thing away. We're going to say some stories.
No, we don't want to do that.
No, but, I just thought that, obviously there were limited resources, and I thought it was extra cool that your dad was doing stuff, like you said, helping out, getting you gear. You said your mom took you to see Chuck Berry and Bo Diddley in concert.
Yeah, I was 11, something like that. I don't know how old I was. Might have even been younger than that.
Yeah.
And, we used to listen to rock and roll on WINS in New York on the radio. And we had some of the records and all that, 45s. And I liked rock and roll music. My brother was older, and he was like a motorcycle jacket and his Elvis Presley haircut, and so was I in a smaller, I was younger than him doing the same stuff.
Yeah.
But he wouldn't take me, so my mother said, I'll take you. She liked music. Yeah. She liked listening to the radio, so she took me. Those were before the days of big amplifiers. Chuck Berry had a small Fender amp, and Bo Diddley's small amp, and big band, really big band. Very impressive.
Now, of course, hard rock drumming was really invented in the 60s. It was pioneered by guys like yourself and your contemporaries like Mitch Mitchell and Ginger Baker, but you guys would have grown up listening to jazz drummers. There were no hard rock drummers. So, you name-checked the Gene Krupa story in your book, and that's always been one of my favorite movies about a musician, because I can easily imagine someone seeing that film and leaving the theater just really wanting to play the drums. They made it look really exciting.
Yeah, well, that's what happened to me. That was, my first album. Whenever I do interviews, people go, well, what was your first album? They're expecting me to say, like, the Beatles, like a lot of people say, but me, my first album was Gene Krupa and Buddy Rich drum battle album on Verb. And it is amazing. And even the front of the album, which at that time they would just come up with like Photoshop kind of stuff, where I noticed that Gene Krupa's stand was going right through Buddy Rich's bass drum. And I said, wow, that's really weird, how do they do that? I mean, that's how old that album is, and it's just one of those things where Photoshop and overlaid photos with one image with another was brand new back in those days.
So since you brought up drum battles and Buddy Rich, I mean, we got to talk about the Muppets, because that's one of the stories in your book. There was this rumor that, the drummer Animal could have been at least partially modeled on your image and your playing style.
Right. These people that I knew in Australia, they said, "Hey, we saw you on TV last night." I said, "Oh, with Rod Stewart." And so I was with Rod at the time. And no, with the Muppets. I said, "The Muppets?" I said, "What's the Muppets?" I never really watched TV much in the 80s, especially, the Muppets were like, they were like puppets. I wasn't really watching a puppet show on TV.
Yeah.
So they showed me it, and I said, "Oh, wow, that does look like me," because I had curly hair, had drums all over the place. And, the other drummers of the time that had those setups weren't, playing like me and didn't look like me, and they didn't have those kind of setups. So I came back and said to my manager, "Hey, I think I saw this TV show called The Muppets, and this had a drummer on there named Animal. I think he was based after me. It looks like me." So he looked at it and said, "Yeah, it does look like you." So he sent a letter to Jim Henson, or called him, and said, "My artist is a drummer, plays with Rod Stewart, and has been around since the 60s. And I think the persona of your Muppet Animal is my artist persona. And my artist, Carmine Appice, would like to challenge him to a drum battle." And they said, "Oh, that's an interesting idea. We'll get back to you." So, about a week or maybe 10 days go by, and we get a call back. And they said, we presented your idea, and everybody loves the idea. So we got good news and bad news. So we said, "Okay, what's the good news?" He said, "We're going to use the idea. We love it." So I said, "What's the bad news?" He says, "We're going to use Buddy Rich." So I immediately called Buddy, and I said, "I heard you doing the Muppet Show." And he says, "How do you know?" I said, "Because it was my idea. I wanted me to do it." And they came back and they said they love the idea and they're going to use it, but they're going to use you. He said, "Yeah, I am going to do it." I said, "Man, that sucks." And he says, "Hey, they wanted the best," Buddy said to me. I couldn't argue with him there.
No, and in fairness to him, he didn't know it was your idea when he agreed to do it. But...
No, he didn't know it was my idea, but
Yeah.
But he's the best. Period.
Well, just to sort of wrap that up, you described your own playing in your book as a mixture of Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, Joe Morello, and Max Roach. And those are all jazz guys. So that was my point. So like your first big rock break came when Mark Stein and Tim Bogert lured you over to their band, the Pigeons, who of course were later rebranded as Vanilla Fudge. How long did it take you to figure out that their management was perhaps involved in less than legal activities?
Well, as soon as I joined them, I recognized them because I had played that club. It used to be called the Shell House, and then they named it the Action House. And I had a 4-week contract with a band I was with before the Pigeons to play there 4 weekends, like a Friday, Saturday. And halfway through on the third weekend, I went to get paid. And I noticed the whole clientele of the staff looked different. They all had like black turtlenecks and sport jackets on, and they looked pretty rough. They're coming from Brooklyn. I could tell when guys were like mafia kind of guys,
Sure.
And I went in to get paid, and I knocked on the door, and they go, "Who is it?" I said, "It's the band. I want to get paid. Come on in." And I walk in. There was this guy. His name was Chubby. And Chubby was he looked like a really badass.
Yeah.
Let's put it that way. Chubby was asked to be in the movie The Godfather to play Luca Brasi, but Phil, my manager, who was his boss, said he couldn't do it. It's too true to life, So. And then Phil came out, and Phil had a big scar on his face, and he was a shorter, stocky guy, very muscular, stocky kind of guy, who also had that. Okay, here's your money. Thanks, Phil. So when they told me the Action House, I didn't put two and two together because it was a Shell House when I played there. So when I went out to see them, I realized that this was the Shell House, now called the Action House. And this is months later. So in the time that they bought it and everything, they changed it. Now they were drawing huge crowds in the place with the group called the Vagrants. And now they were drawing like 2,000 people out at this Action House because it was a fairly big place. And then I met Phil and Chubby again. And these were the managers. And now they were all like really nice, and it wasn't no aggression in their voice at all. And And I said, I was here a few months ago. I played with this thing. I came in to get paid. You guys paid me. And they didn't remember. So I said, that's okay.
I just wanted to mention that name Vanilla Fudge, while it's never a bad thing to subliminally connect your listeners to the concept of dessert, it's actually a reference to white guys playing soulfully. It's not really a reference to food.
Yeah, I mean, Tim Bogert, I just read an old interview with Tim Bogert. Tim Bogert said it didn't reference white soul, but I remember this woman saying, you guys are like white soul, Vanilla Fudge,
It's a lot better than the Pigeons.
Yeah. We did a show with the Birds of the Seeds, and it would have been the Birds of Seeds and the Pigeons.
Yeah, that's pretty funny.